As many of you know, I've been covering the Channel Migrant Crisis for well over a year, going out into the English Channel when other mainstream broadcasters seemed not to want to do so. As a political issue, it is rising up the list. In fact, it's now said in some of the red wall northern seats, it is the top issue. And the reason is people voted, old Labour voters voted Brexit, and then, having gone through other parties, lent their vote to Boris Johnson in 2019 because they believed we were taking back control of our borders, and they are furious. Well, I'm pleased to say that if you want to cover what's going on with the migrant crisis, GBNews is absolutely committed to doing that and giving you the full story. And that's why I was so thrilled when Mark White joined us as our new Home Affairs and Security editor. And he wasn't wasting much time, Mark, were you? You've been down in Dover today. Tell us what you've seen.
Yeah, another day, Nigel, when, of course, every time those conditions are flat calm out in the Channel, you get a surge of these small boats being sent off from France by the criminal gangs over into UK waters. It was exactly the same today. It was a bit of a late start. There was a couple of boats in the morning, but by afternoon, Border Force were running about all over the place trying to get to the latest small
And by afternoon means the boats were being launched on French beaches in broad daylight, a point that's worth.
They were indeed, and there was a very significant incident that unfolded, perhaps an indication of the difficulties that Priti Patel is going to face going forward. And this afternoon, a French vessel, a patrol boat, Formentine, was following a group of migrants in a boat round about halfway across the Channel just before it entered the UK waters. They had, according to the French, tried to intercept that vessel. Yeah, believe it if you like. They said that they wanted the migrants to come on board their vessel to take them back to France. Those on board that small boat weren't having any of it. They jumped into the water and then refused to get onto the French vessel. There was a full-scale search and rescue operation that was mounted at that point. The Border Force sent their vessel Hunter over. An RNLI boat was involved, and also the Coast Guard helicopter. Those on board, the 5 people who jumped into the water, were picked up after about half an hour, taken back to Dover to be medically assessed. But I think the significance about this is Priti Patel wants to start pushing these boats back to France. Now, if they decide to jump in the water, it's going to be an impossible task to do that because lives are potentially at risk, people could potentially die, and I think, you know, that would be just a very, very troubling issue for Priti Patel to have to deal with.
I understand that.
Yeah. She was in Dover today. You were saying that this is very, very important in the red wall seats. It absolutely is. She knows that. That's why, of course, today, the very first thing she did after being reconfirmed as Home Secretary is go to Dover to meet with Border Force to see exactly what they're doing. I've been down there, as you said, as well, and this is my look at how the day unfolded. Racing back into Dover Harbour, the Border Force vessel Hunter, after its dramatic mid-channel rescue of 5 migrants who jumped into the water to avoid being picked up by the French. They were taken away for medical checks after spending around half an hour in the sea. It is a stark illustration of the lengths those in small boats will go to ensure they're only ever picked up by the British. And it's an indication of the huge difficulties UK authorities are likely to face if they implement the Home Secretary's planned new policy of turning small boats back towards France. Newly reconfirmed in her post, Priti Patel visited Dover's Border Force teams on the day hundreds more made this dangerous and illegal crossing. It's on days like today, almost flat calm in the middle of the English Channel, that we see a surge in these small boats attempting to cross. But the criminal gangs are nothing if not ruthless, and even on the rougher days, they're still pushing these boats out to sea. As we filmed, 2 of the latest jet skis being used by Border Force officers left Dover Harbour. They're still training, working out the best way to intercept the small boats and turn them back.
Sort of come in and say hello.
Further up the coast, relaxing outside their beach hut, these two have seen it all over the years, including many small boats landing on the beaches here. Well, Brian and Charlie have been fishing in the waters around here for more than 2 decades. And Brian, you've seen many of these small boats come ashore. What should the Home Secretary be doing to get a grip of this crisis?
Well, first of all, get a grip on the French. They're just letting them come through their countries. They're not trying. And then they're a peaceful country. Where's the war torn that they're coming from? They've come through about 6 different countries to get here. And most of them are here for the money, nothing else.
Yeah. So the French should certainly do more. And Charlie, in terms of the turning back policy that the Home Secretary wants to adopt, do you think that could work?
Well, we've seen them practising out in the Channel, and the first thing I would say is it ain't going to work, because they're just going to get a child and drop it into the water, and that would be the end of it, because they're then saving lives. So they wouldn't be able to turn them back. It's not the possible. I don't think it's going to be a practical solution. Plus putting, 200 million in for new boats to try and do it? No, be a waste of time.
For the moment, those brought to Dover are processed in this makeshift marquee. But with no end in sight to the numbers crossing, this new multi-million-pound assessment centre is being built nearby. Tied up here in Dover Harbour, these are just some of the small boats that Border Force have intercepted in recent days. In fact, just a tiny sample. There are hundreds more of these flimsy vessels in a storage lot not far from here. Out fishing for mackerel on Dover Beach, Chris HIRST tells me it may only be a matter of time before there's a large-scale tragedy out in the Channel. But he says he understands the desperation which is driving people to make such a dangerous journey.
Obviously these people they're not in a good way, are they, to do that in the first place? So I don't know really, but at the same time we can't keep taking it on in our country.
The Home Secretary says the small boats crisis is a top priority. But as yet more boats are intercepted and taken back to Dover. We are heading inevitably towards an alarming milestone. Within days, the number who've crossed the Channel this year will reach 16,000, double the number for the whole of last year. Mark White, GBNews, Dover.
Mark, in all the time I've studied this, and I've really studied this for the last 18 months, very closely, pretty much every day that it's been calm, this is the first incident I've heard of the French Navy attempting to turn a boat around, because all I've ever watched them is them escorting, shepherding the boats into British waters. But it's also the first time I've heard of people jumping overboard. And you're right, and Charlie, the fisherman, was right, that this does present Priti Patel's turn the boats around with a major problem, because there could be a risk to life. But equally, not doing anything is a major risk to life. It is remarkable to me that not more people have died on these crossings over the course of the last 3 years. And all it would need is one of those new 11-metre, very flimsy boats, bits of balsa wood glued into the bottom, you've seen them. All it would need is one of those to collide with a tanker, and we'd be looking at perhaps dozens of people that didn't make it. So I think there are risks with trying to do something, there are risks with not doing anything. What do you think, Priti Patel? What do you think her next move is?
Well, I think she's going to give this pushback policy a try. And in addition, she's clearly trying to continue to pressure the French with the £54 million pounds that we're giving the French authorities to help bolster their security arrangements along the coast. But it's now 200 kilometres of French coast that they're setting these boats off from. As I say, the French, of course, they have a duty of care for those on their soil as well, not to allow them to embark on such a dangerous journey in the first place.
Well, quite.
But I think the real concern will be in the months ahead, because I noticed last year, the first year that this was really happening, about 3 years ago, when we got to the winter months, the number of boats coming, it just died off. You didn't see any, actually, over the really bad winter months. Last year, you were still seeing them, not in massive numbers, but you were still seeing them coming in rough weather. I think this year, despite the weather, they're going to shove them on these boats.
They were still coming in 60s, 70s, 80s a day, as you say, through January and February. I mean, not through extreme weather.
And that's where we could get a tragedy in these conditions.
Yeah. We're heading for 16,000. We're heading for double the number last year. Who's to say what that number will be by the end of the year? And not, just to emphasise one last quick point, not a single person who's come across the channel this year has been deported, not one.
Yeah, I mean, and when that process does take place, it is lengthy. It's not just weeks or months, but often years.
Mark White, thank you. That was a great package. And, yeah, Priti Patel has got some real problems on her hands.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.